Welcome everyone to this episode of EcosystmTV. I'm Ullrich Loeffler, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Ecosystm, and I'm very excited to be joined by Badri Srinivasan, the Regional Managing Director for Wipro in Southeast Asia and India. Thanks for joining me, Badri.
Pleasure.
Badri, you're not new to the tech industry, but some of our viewers may not have met you personally. Can you give a quick introduction to your journey, but also how you maybe ended up in technology in the first place and then today managing Wipro here in the Southeast Asian region?
Oh, that's a fascinating question that takes me back. I started selling television sets and I realized that was not for me. So it was serendipity. I walked into the tech sector, started off focusing on the US market, was privileged to work with several Fortune 100 firms across areas of customer experience, then looking at how do we really transform core business, etc., leveraging technology. And then I spent a brief amount of time in Europe, focusing on solutions in the BFSI sector. And over the last 10 years has been fascinating for me personally, rediscovering Asia. Rediscovering Asia as a culture, as a market, as a business, and focusing on clients who are going through transformative change for themselves, leveraging digital, leveraging cloud, and also focusing on things that matter deeply to them, including cybersecurity and protection and so on. So that's been the last 10 years of my journey. Been with Wipro now for the last 18 months. It's been a fantastic ride, kind of understanding the firm, getting to know the organization. Wipro, I realized as I got in, is a firm with a very, very deep purpose. It's an organization that gives 67% of what it earns back for societal causes, areas of education, healthcare, sustainability of the planet, and so on. These are values that I deeply believe in. So that's made the journey even more enjoyable.
Badri, you can look back to a very successful career working in different continents in the US, in Europe, now, as you said, rediscovering Asia. What makes you specifically excited about the journey ahead now with Wipro here in the Southeast Asian and India region?
Firstly, from a macro perspective, Asia has been showing promise over the last decade or more. And if you look at large firms, the intensity of focus has gone up substantially, kind of playing with the macro parameters in Asia. There's been a significant acceleration coming to digital and technology, solving client problems. Digital and tech has made its way into boardrooms. So from a Wipro standpoint, we've really done two things. One is we've intensified our P&L focus on Asia. So we have the autonomy to operate Asia as a region, focus on Asia, invest in Asia. And the second thing is we've also looked at, with digital and technology getting into the boardrooms, we should have the ability to solve complex business outcomes for our clients. So we've been forming up to solve for problems, not just technology problems, but for business outcomes.
You mentioned that technology truly made it into the boardroom, and our research shows as well that pretty much every organization today has accepted to look to technology to overcome challenges, to address volatility, to drive value across the organization. But we're seeing a wide spectrum of success. Some companies are very successful in driving their digital journeys, and some other ones are lagging behind. From your perspective, what drives success? What are the critical success factors that you need for your building digital capabilities across your organization?
That's an interesting question that I hope there's a clear answer for out there. But the standard template that I've seen is initiatives have a significant outcome and value focus, sponsored right at the top. And that sponsorship at the top eliminates friction in the organization, eliminates barriers that get us to outcomes that we need to get to. And we've seen organizations that are more focused right at the top in terms of navigating these changes, firstly being more successful. Then the second part of it is how do you percolate that vision down into the organization and make the organization change ready. Especially in Asia, the need for change is so high. The organizations that adapt themselves and change faster have been those ones that have been more progressive in terms of ability to move forward, in terms of ability to get initiatives through the line, etc. So there's a lot of behavioral and cultural aspects that need to be focused on. What makes things a bit more complex in Asia is it's heterogeneous in terms of cultures, heterogeneous in terms of cross-border complexities, geopolitical complexities, etc. So those sensitivities need to be kept in mind. The last aspect is when you land digital and technology initiatives, what we've seen is the ability to land something big is just not there. So kind of doing a big blob of things versus getting things done in sprints, outcomes done in sprints, value drops done in sprints, that's something that I've seen to be more successful.
We talked about the change in the market and the rapid introduction of new technologies. Being a research firm, we're quite known for putting heat maps out on what's hot, what's not, and what are our predictions. You talk to executives on a daily basis. What is keeping them awake at night, and what is on their mind? So, if you had to do a heat map report, what would be top of mind for you?
I think the biggest part is there is a certain curiosity in our clients' minds in terms of how tech can solve for business problems. We have had to adapt and change ourselves. We were talking tech for tech outcomes, simplification and rationalization and so on and so forth. But tech for business outcomes is something we are changing ourselves to take to our clients. And we found our clients to be inherently more curious. When we talk topics and link it to what it means for the business, whether it is in terms of revenue, whether it's in terms of operational efficiencies and cash flows, or in terms of insights, there's this need to look at it in greater depth and detail. So that's the type of conversations that we've been having as the Wipro group, and particularly in regions strengthened by a few of our acquired entities. For example, Capco, which is able to take a very relevant conversation in the BFSI sector, or Design It, which looks at experience across the spectrum, whether it's product or services or spatial. So that's reforming ourselves to outcomes.
We are in the second half of 2023. The first half has been very eventful. A lot of volatility politically, economically. We have seen new technologies which have taken the industry by storm, changed what the discussions in boardrooms. What is your outlook for the remainder of the year, also for the next 12 months ahead?
So firstly, we've kind of looked at it in two directions. One is, how is the macro impacting us? Now, from that standpoint, I would say we continue to be cautiously optimistic in Asia. We are seeing clients go through discretionary initiatives across the board, that they are very cautious in terms of every dollar that's going out. But the second bit is not really looking at it in a short-term chunk, but really looking at it at a longer-term interval. And when we look at that, Asia gets a lot more fascinating. We ourselves as a firm are looking so closely into what's happening in Asia and how can we tap into that promise, particularly in the Southeast Asia region, also in the India region, for example. So we are really looking at how can we go deeper into the markets, how can we pivot some of our focus into Asia. While we've had a very good run in the Western markets, we are finding that as we look forward in the longer term, there is a lot more meaning in the Asia markets. There are power economies to be had. You're looking at Indonesia, looking at India. There's a bunch of these markets that are going to be extremely vibrant over the coming years. So that's really something that we're watching closely.
I've got to ask you a question on this, because you're right. I mean, the Southeast Asia market is fascinating. It has so much potential. One of the fastest growing regions, globally. So huge potential. And historically, Asia has often looked to the Western world to look, hey, what are best practices to deploy or apply technology. Do you see this changing, that maybe some of the other more mature geographies are looking to Southeast Asia or to Asia in general to see, like, hey, how can we adapt some of the innovation that is coming out of Southeast Asia?
Right. I'm seeing a slightly different beat. The beat that I'm seeing is the Asia path is different from the path that the Western markets have gone through. There is significant leapfrogging in terms of use of technology. So if there have been 5 steps in the West, there are 2 in Asia. So there's a very different approach there. There's a huge democratization of how data is consumed. There's penetration of mobile has been significantly high. And there are markets where there is significant disintermediation between firms and customers and consumers. So that's something that I believe is fairly unique to Asia as a beat, where we can't apply the Western template in. In terms of the rivers, yes, there's always curiosity in clients to engage. I've had C-suite coming in from Western markets wanting to engage with their peer group in Asia to learn from each other in terms of what they're going through and speed and challenges and so on and so forth. But I do believe the templates are different.
Thank you, Badri. Unfortunately, we're coming almost to the end of our time, so we've got to wrap it up. And I wanted to ask you a personal question as a leader. You work in a fast-paced, always-on industry, and we're talking a lot about work-life integration. How do you personally decelerate, and how do you rebalance, recharge to keep going, in your work and personal life?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Look, this is one that across the industry, there needs to be a much deeper introspection in terms of our behaviors and our ways of working. So I'll again answer this in two parts. One is, as a firm, we are very, very conscious in terms of work-life balance. There is a respect that if somebody is switched off, or if somebody has gone on a holiday, or it's a weekend, that space is respected. That's a learning that I believe that the industry has to go through and we have to force ourselves on. I practice what I preach from my own perspective. When I switch off, I switch off. My work environment is my work environment. My personal environment is my personal environment. Usually it doesn't intermingle. So I switch off when I'm out. There has to be a good space for myself, for my ecosystem, my family and friends. So that's something that I'm extremely conscious of. And if there's a few snippets of what I can share, it's really up to the individual in terms of how they strike that balance. And it is important that we strike that balance to give the best to the organization, but also maintain our longevity, health, and fitness.
Thank you, Badri. I think that's a perfect statement to finish this episode. Thanks again for joining me. Really appreciate your time and would love to continue this conversation and to see how your journey evolves throughout the Southeast Asia and India markets. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you will rejoin us again for one of the next episodes of EcosystmTV. Thank you.